Check, 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 check. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check, check. Microphone 1. Check, check, check.
by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? It's the fact that Kamala Harris, the border czar, opened the American southern border. It's the fact that the Democratic Party has become explicitly anti-family in some of their policies. In fact, you just heard Kamala Harris in a Surface clip recently talk about how it was a bad idea to have kids because of climate change anxiety. So really what I'm trying to get at here, Trey, is that it's important for us to be pro-family as a country. Of course, for a whole host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it. That we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it. It's the fact that Kamala, a host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. Fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. Live and what came before you. Came before you.
By a bunch of childless cat ladies.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know? You think you just fell out of a coconut in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. And what came before you.
the door. Nobody would ever invite me to parties or anything, so I would just go home and do this. But he's like, oh, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I can hear him great. Perfect. Yeah, everybody's good. It's all about the buttons. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love it. 12, 30, 40, 50, 16.
You know?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs,
The
by a
internet
bunch of
is
childless
forever.
cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? Are opened the American southern border. It's the fact that the Democratic Party has become explicitly anti. It's the fact that Kamala Harris, the border czar, opened the American southern border. It's the fact that the Democratic Party has become explicitly anti-family in some of their policies. In fact, you just heard Kamala Harris in a Surface clip recently talk about how it was a bad idea to have kids because of climate change anxiety. So really what I'm trying to get at here, Trey, is that it's important for us to be pro-family as a country. Of course, for a whole host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Hey, good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Sure. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I can hear you. Hello, Amy. Yes. Great. So we're just going to start off with her while we have her. Okay. That's what we're going to go. And you know, if we have to cut that A box shorter, just know that. This is fun. We always make it work. It's okay. We got this. Exactly. Unlimited. So that always goes over real well. Really? Oh, yes. Okay. Yay! For you, I'm going to have to be 3 women. There's lots of women out there. Oh, wait a minute. There's not. Gabrielle Lanes, president of the Five Victus Strategy and the chair of the Florida First PAC, and Dr. Linda Lee Tarver of Tarleton Consulting, author of the book Dyed in the Wool. God, Steve Jarn. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, why don't you almost do the whole thing. Yeah, stop. Let's do it. Yep, let's do it. Yeah, let's stop. You can do it. We're actually ahead of schedule. Yay, go us, Gold Star. Cupcakes all around, if I have any. Hey, we're doing a women's show, Rick. Do you want to come on?
And okay. Oh, like this playing. Hi. Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
The internet is forever. Nowadays, it can make or even break a candidate. From receiving backlash from those embracing the title childless cat ladies to buying support from an entire generation, part of this election cycle is definitely playing out online. But who will come out on top or on bottom when it comes to the two very important demographics? Either way, the U.S. presidential election is a wild ride. I'm Sky Nell Hughes, and this is Perspective. J.D. Vance, the recent addition to the Donald J. Trump ticket, has been called a mini version of Trump because of his beliefs, values, and even choice of words. However, the backgrounds of the two could not be any further alike, as Trump grew up in a very affluent family at the country club, while J.D. was raised by his grandmother, as his mother fought her drug addiction in the Ohio Valley and the hills of Kentucky. Well, I'm sure J.D. Vance's upbringing in blue-collar America, as well as military service background, were a factor in his choosing. One of the greatest benefits J.D. Vance was supposed to bring to the Republican ticket was his age. On the verge of turning 40, J.D. Vance is one of the youngest candidates for vice president. And in a race that used to be dominated by two old men, Vance was hoping to being half their age would appeal and engage the younger generation. Now, by younger, I mean below the age of 55. But as with all campaign election cycles, things change. And Democrats, sensing the advantage J.D. Vance would bring with younger voters, have chosen another candidate to counter. A candidate who not only represents one, but two sought-after demographics. In 2020, President Joe Biden's winning edge was provided by the Black and Hispanic women voters, as 90% and 69% of those blocs voted for him respectively. However, while women comprise the largest group of registered voters and tend to turn out to vote in large numbers, is it now fair to assume the majority of those women will show their support to Kamala Harris just in the name of solidarity? Well, let us discuss with our panel. Stevie Giorno, who is the chair of the Young Republicans of Tennessee and a frequent guest, and it was the youngest delegate at the RNC. Gabrielle Lanes, who is the president of Victus Strategies and the chair of the Florida First PAC, and Dr. Linda. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this. You know, I want to start off. Obviously, it's very interesting to talk about youth and female votes. Okay, let's discuss with our panel. Okay. 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 3, 2, 1. Well, let us discuss with our panel Stevie Giorno, who is the chair of the Young Republicans of Tennessee and was the youngest delegate at the RNC. Gabrielle Lanes, who is the president of Victus Strategies and the chair of the Florida First PAC. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. You know, before we get to the specific comments that were made by the candidates, I want to talk about how Kamala Harris is currently doing a roundup of campaign Zoom calls, separating each out by white men, black men, white women, black women. Stevie, I want to ask you, do you feel like it's good to segregate out the different demographics and promote the candidates specifically to that group? I thought we were supposed to be talking about unity in the USA.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think it's wrong. I think at the end of the day, we're all Americans and the issues affect all of us equally. And I think that it just shows what the Democrat Party is all about. It's about segregating people and dividing people based on skin color or how much money you have or what religion you are, instead of what our founding fathers and what the Republican Party stands for, which is everyone should be treated equally. We're all equal before the law, and we should all have the same opportunities.
That's interesting, Gabrielle, because, you know, Stevie brought up it's the Republican Party, But in the past, Republicans have done a pretty good job of isolating different groups out. Isn't that been the goal of the Democrats, has actually been unity, to kind of get everyone together on the same page? They've been able to do it. Does it help when you start segmenting out from a Democrat perspective?
I don't think so. Ultimately, all these issues that we're seeing that's at the table at the moment are going to affect every American the same way. You see the Hispanic Americans, Democrats have been making a play here for the last 20 years for the Hispanic Americans. And while it had been working for some time, the average cost of housing, the inflation, the price of goods have gone up and skyrocketed, the open border, law and order, and people in every demographic and every group are just not having it. Because ultimately, Scotty, when they sit down for dinner, they're seeing that the prices of goods are going up, and they're worried about how they're going to feed their children.
Gabrielle, you bring up a really good point about what actually is supposed to unite all of us, the same issues that affect all of us. And yet you usually only hear Republicans talking about those comments. You actually talk about, it's always funny and especially in this election cycle, it's the Republicans that are constantly saying, no, it's education, it's border security. That's affecting all the demographics. Do Republicans feel like that is a message of unity that they're pushing? Is that the message that they need to be focused on? Or maybe should they try going after these specific demographics like the Democrats have done?
Well, we're seeing them do it too, right? There's a large concerted effort to going after the Hispanic vote at the moment. President Trump in the past has made a play for the African American vote as well. And the women vote, I mean, the play is quite simple: law and order. We know that that's what the number one issue among women at the moment, suburban women who are worried about their kids being out in the streets with fentanyl, with the illegal immigration, with the rise in crime around our cities, both suburban and urban. And so you could try to segregate and move these people into little blocks, but ultimately it won't work. The Democrats have tried to. I will suspect that they're going to probably make after the Labor Day try to change tactics on how they're doing this, because ultimately, if the Republicans just talk about issues and stay away from the culture stuff and the segregation stuff and putting people into little boxes, it's their race to lose.
Well, and that's the thing, because when you look at it right now, and I want to go to you on this one, Steve, because JD Vance has been in the news for all the wrong reasons this week, at least in the mainstream media's perspective. And they pulled a quote that was from back when he was on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News. I'm sure you've heard it. It's making the rounds. Take a listen.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Okay, there are major parts of that soundbite right there that's been dissected over and over. I want to take one part with you first on this, Stevie. Do you think candidates should be held accountable for past comments, or should there be almost a statute of limitations depending on how enraging the comment can be, now that we do have social media and the internet that can document every minute of present-day politicians, where in the past, they didn't really get to say, that was not necessarily on the record as much as we can recall it today?
Well, I think it depends on the context of what they're saying, and how bad of something, how bad it is. I don't think, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all say things we shouldn't say. But I think the American people really, the news can say it as much as they want, but the American people care about lowering gas prices. They want to be safe in their communities. And if someone says something they may disagree with, like JD said, a lot of people may say they'd prefer that he didn't say that, but it is what it is. I think most people care about, having a well-paid job, having their kids taken care of. But I certainly think that you can't hold people accountable for what they're saying forever, especially if it's something where, it's not too big of a deal. People may disagree with it, but at the end of the day, we've got to get our country back on the tracks, because what's going on is ridiculous. We have a president who's such a nice guy who's doing an awful job. And that is such a great reason of why we may need some people who are not very nice who would do a really good job.
Okay, but then on that comment, Gabrielle, you've got J.D. Vance heading out to Arizona. In preface to this, the Democrats are running a wide variety of ads there talking about, which has a huge Hispanic voter base, talking about abortion, talking about the right to birth control, and how they believe J.D. Vance wants to get rid of that right for women. how does that messaging sound within the Hispanic community, a largely Catholic community? Do they embrace this pro-abortion talk that seems to be pushed by the Democrat Party right now, especially in the Hispanic communities?
Absolutely not. You make a great point in the Catholic community, which of the Hispanic community is predominantly Catholic, but among many other Americans as well. We know that these ad hominem attacks are not going to be good for either side. They should stick to the policies. And when you talk about things like you just mentioned, the Catholic vote, well, the Republicans and the Trump campaign needs to go out and do a better job of explaining to folks on the issues. I mean, it was the Biden-Harris administration that went after the Catholics and had their administration put people in Catholic pews because they deemed them possible domestic terrorists. These are the type of issues that they need to be focusing on. By the way, the Hispanic population does not like abortion. They don't like the trans agenda. They're very careful. They're very careful, and they care about what's being taught in the schools. They came to this country. Most of them came to this country to give a better life to their children. They're seeing their children being taught all kinds of woke nonsense in school, and not the things that are going to prepare them for the future, which is AI, data analytics, computer science, and rather they're coming out of high school, have very little preparation for the real world, and then going into college and getting indoctrinated more. That's exactly what the Hispanic population cares about. It's what the overall American population are currently seeing, unfortunately.
Well, and that's a very interesting part of it because we bring out the demographics on both sides of that, except it seems like one is trying to attract based on positive reasons. The other side might actually try to push away because of what they're saying the other side's trying to do to them. But I want to go back to these Zoom calls that have set up because I'm really fascinated because we've had Kamala Harris is forming Cat and Dog Ladies Unite for Kamala Harris for President, Childless Cat Ladies for Kamala's on Twitter. Women posting pictures with their cats, and just of Taylor Swift's Time magazine cover of her and her cat. You also have white men for Kamala Harris. You have black men for Kamala Harris. Everybody's breaking on that demographic. Now, could you imagine that same thing happening, Stevie, and them organizing those type of different demographics? Black woman for Donald Trump. Could you ever see that happening? And what do you think the backlash could be? And is it hypocritical that one can do it and the other cannot?
Oh, absolutely. But we've seen for years how the Democrat Party is the party of hypocrisy. They've been able to get away with so many things to where if you or I did it, we'd be put in jail. If you look at Hunter Biden, if we, threw a pistol in a garbage can and left it there, we'd be in jail right now. And so when you just look at everything that's gone on, the Democrat Party is controlled by, like you said, the oligarchs, and the media protects them. And so the media is going to continue doing whatever it takes to make sure that Kamala Harris can do no wrong. But I think the American people are going to see through it because you can't hide the gas prices. You can't hide the grocery bills. You cannot hide millions of illegal immigrants coming into our country. Then I think the results of that will be seen in November. There's just no way that they can continue avoiding it. Even some of the media has turned on Joe Biden even before he said he wasn't going to run. And we remember in 2020 when Kamala Harris was doing so well when she announced she was running for president. Well, about 3 or 4 months later, she wasn't running for president anymore when the media turned on her. So I guess we'll have to see if the momentum for her campaign is going to die out or if she'll be able to get through to November.
But it's interesting, Stevie, because you mentioned time, and you're right. Time is so important right now, but we don't have 3 or 4 months until our election. In fact, it's within 2 months that we start early voting here in the United States for the presidential campaign. Gabrielle, on that comment, when you look at what's going on, you're looking at the backlash. It's only been 2 weeks since J.D. Vance. Do you think that Donald Trump is having any buyer's remorse for having J.D. Vance, or do you think the campaign knew these comments were going to come back up and have handled them correctly or could have handled them better?
We all know that these campaigns do great Oppo research, and these things are all online. This was Tucker Carlson, for God's sake. So I'm sure the Trump campaign has already looked at this before. The play with J.D. Vance is that he's going to bring in the working class vote. He's going to bring in the Great Lakes states that are going to be so crucial for this election, whether it's Pennsylvania, Ohio, of course, Wisconsin or Michigan. President Trump only needs 2 of those. Scotty, the interesting thing to note here is that the average American is in a record amount of credit card debt. And this has happened all under the Biden-Harris watch, including that the average American family is spending $2,000 more a year than they make in income. I don't see how you could talk about anything else but the issues. We look at polling. You're right. There's not a lot of time left from here to November, but it can be an eternity when it comes to politics. And what is it? What are the polls showing us? Even after the honeymoon phase with Kamala Harris, President Trump is still up 2 points in the RCP average. She'll probably get another bump after the convention. We're probably going to see that here in the next couple of weeks, and then things are going to settle out. And if President Trump just focuses on the issues, the polls that are trend lines show us that President Trump's approval rating of his presidency among average voters is 51%. For Kamala Harris and the way she's governed, it's less than 41%. That tells you all you need to hear.
Well, what I do need to hear is more policy, and that's why I would like to ask you, Gabrielle and Stevie, to stay with me, because we're talking about something that a lot of people on the campaign trail are not. So stay with me, because after the break, we will examine the youth vote, and if J.D. Vance's age and Kamala Harris's meme ability will help either one of them. Welcome back to Perspective. I'm your host, Scotty Nell Hughes. There are many reasons Democrats have given for pulling President Joe Biden from the top of the ticket. But it is pretty obvious that certain key groups known for their loyalty to the Democrats were just not excited or motivated in their support. Now his replacement, Kamala Harris, is known for her word salads. Most recently, her campaign has tried to embrace it, as Gen Z is tracking her voice to a popular artist's song of the summer.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
This has actually turned into a whole movement. And it all started when Charlie tweeted out, Kamala is a brat. That's Charlie XCX, by the way. The singer herself describes the term brat as, quote, that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe sometimes says dumb things. Sometimes. Well, that's Charlie XCX's Brat album. Became a major hit this summer. Shirts supporting Harris based off the album art have gone viral on TikTok. Young people seem to be unburdened by Harris's trademark vague phrases. Harris's team has actually adopted this brat title by changing her Headquarters X page to the neon green banner and using a similar black front to replicate the Brat album. Let's bring it back in our panel to discuss. Stevie Giorno, chair of the Young Republicans of Tennessee, Gabrielle Lanes, president of Vivictus Strategies and chair of Florida First PAC. Thank you so much for joining me. You know what I think is interesting is these controversial moments. Steve, I got to get your comment that we talk about the Brat comment. You got Charlie's come in here, made it to be viral, which is actually kind of genius from a marketing perspective. She was addressing, actually, I want to go to you on this, Gabrielle. She was addressing a room of Hispanics when she said that. When she said, did you think you just fell off a coconut tree? Why are Hispanics not getting upset about that comment from her, like we've heard cat ladies getting upset about J.D. Vance's?
Well, first and foremost, she has the media on her side, and we saw how quickly they all coalesced around her as soon as Biden dropped out and she became the presumptive nominee. But Hispanics are not really paying attention to this stuff at the moment. I don't think the average Hispanic was coming home from work at 7 p.m. and maybe working 2 jobs, struggling to put food on their table, is looking through TikTok and seeing all the latest videos of Kamala Harris or seeing the realities of life. Most people don't pay attention, including Hispanics, to the presidential election until after Labor Day. That's what we're seeing right now. Most people aren't paying attention. And by the way, if this is the strategy that the Harris campaign is going to take, great. I think Republicans should welcome it, because when she gets into the policy side of things, she's going to lose, as we've already discussed here. And ultimately, this is going to be a pocketbook election, mark my words, and a law and order election. She was the border czar. She did absolutely nothing for inflation. And we're going to see a whole lot more of it between here and November. And ultimately, Hispanics, Black Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, and all Americans for that matter, are ultimately going to look at, where was I better off? They're in the Biden-Harris administration or under the Trump administration. So they could keep their memes and their funny videos going. Great, I welcome it. It's a complete distraction, and it looks out of touch.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I do think that makes Trump so popular is that he has been able to identify. I mean, the brand Trump and that logo MAGA has become such a viral hit himself, though, with amongst the younger demographics of buying the hats, the flags, everything else, that they have all the paraphernalia that goes with it. It's interesting. This is the first time I've seen Democrats be able to match that in any form. Still not to the level, though, that I think Trump's been able to do it. Stevie, but I think a lot of people don't understand that Kamala Harris is being accused of buying her viral sensationalism with the youth. And a lot of that money that she raised right after her announcement, well, she's using it in paid post marketing. $150 for a post encouraging followers to vote for Kamala. So do you think that her honeymoon phase is authentic and polling popularity uptick with youth is really happening?
Well, I think when you look at President Trump, he doesn't have to pay people asking them to vote for him. They just do it because they think he's right. You know, to your point of why people resonate so much with the Make America Great Again movement is because it's self-explanatory. You know, if you tried explaining to friends of mine, what does a brat mean? I think most of them are going to look and be like, we think this is kind of foolish. We don't understand what this has to do with anything. You know, she may get a lot of votes just because you're having, you know, Taylor Swift out there and Charlie. You know, I think it'll be similar to 2008 when you had Jay-Z and Oprah come out and support President Obama. But I think today there are going to be more people that go against that message because they don't want to get drafted. Young people do not want to get drafted to go fight in Ukraine. And we've seen the past few years in Afghanistan and Ukraine and Taiwan that this administration cannot be trusted with our future. So why would we give the lady who's the second most responsible for our current predicaments more power? But I think that she's going to have a bump for sure for now. But once the excitement runs out and people remember that, like Tulsi Gabbard said in the debate, that she went after people wrongfully who were innocent and withheld evidence and went after minority communities, people are going to remember why they didn't want to vote for her in 2020. And that's the reason she got 1% in the primary. And This time she had 0% in the primary, but is still the nominee.
Okay, so it's interesting you bring that up, Steve, because Gabrielle, you hear that she's going viral with all of these little brat comments and with all the celebrities in the United States. But how is that going? She's taking drag queens to the White House. She's filming TikTok dances. Not really well administered, in my personal opinion. But how do you think that's actually feeling? How is that going to be applied to her international foreign policy, where people say she's very weak? Is that going to, people going to go, maybe you need to put a little bit more strength in your policy numbers than necessarily your pop and lock on TikTok? I mean, can people take her international policy seriously?
Yeah, there you go. Talk about the issues. We all remember when she went over to Europe and became a laughing stock all around the world leaders when they didn't even understand what she was saying, and some of them were actively giggling while she was speaking. And so those are the things that Trump needs to highlight. Sure, go ahead and do your memes, go ahead and do your dance videos and TikToks. Ultimately, the average American doesn't care. The average American is struggling. The average American sees what's going on overseas, where everything seems to be on fire. The border is wide open. The price of housing is in the 400,000s where it was in the 200,000s with Trump and president. Inflation is killing us at the grocery store. I don't know what Kamala Harris's team is trying to do, get out of this. The youth vote, they are trending up among the youth vote. It's a fact. I can't deny that. But it doesn't say anything about getting people out to the polls. Ultimately, this is going to be about who comes out and vote. If you tell me who's going to come out and vote, I'll tell you who's going to win. And at the moment, it's trending for President Trump.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, Stevie, I have to ask you this one because if tradition holds that most demographics, minority females and youth, vote Democrat, on that comment, do you think that Kamala Harris, if she was not a female, if she was not African American, do you think right now that she'd be the nominee at the top of the ticket for the Democratic Party?
No, I don't. She got destroyed in 2020, but I think that Joe Biden had to pick someone like her. And as a result of what you had mentioned, that's why people forgot that when she was a prosecutor, she put people in jail for having small amounts of marijuana. I think she is going to do a terrible job if she's elected. We've seen what she's done as vice president, and I can't tell you a single thing she's done right. I don't know a single thing. There may be, I disagree with almost everything Democrats do, but sometimes you can find common ground with them. And I can't find anything that Kamala Harris has done right or hasn't embarrassed us on in policy or in foreign relations or anything. And it's very worrisome that all these young people are supporting her, even though she would make their lives infinitely harder for them to have a family, to buy a house, to get a well-paying job. But just because it's a socially acceptable movement to support the Democrat, they're going to do it.
Stevie, you're acting like a brat. Just kidding. I had to say it. I was just trying to figure out a way to use the word in there. I want to thank you, Stevie Giardo, Gabrielle Lanes. Definitely not brats. And always welcome on the show.
Thank you.
So, speaking as a woman with 2 minor children who were approached back in 2016 to actually run for an open congressional seat, the one reason why I did not do so was because of my children and the effect it would have on me, on the family, and the role that I wanted to play. If my responsibilities in the home were not as I chose as a woman to make them by getting married and having children, having always loved politics, I could potentially be the one sitting in the house childless. But I'm more of a dog person too. So there's several things that Kamala Harris and I don't agree on. This controversy that's surrounding Vance's comments, however, is more about actually how he said it and the way that it's supposedly offended several different demographics. Okay. Hey, why don't you get rid of that first paragraph? Let's go just to the second part of that paragraph since we got rid of the women's stuff. Just to the second one. Just say the controversy surrounding Vance's comments is more about how he said it. So let's just do that. Yeah. Yeah. Because the other one, we didn't do much women's stuff. Okay. Right there, right. You know, the real controversy surrounding J.D. Vance's comments, however, is actually more about how he said it. This does not mean that he disrespects strong, independent women or young voters. Look at his own personal choices and his wife, Usha, who is not only a Yale law degree, but also a master's from Cambridge, and is a litigator for a prestigious law firm in San Francisco. But just like Joe Biden regrets, I'm sure, using the N-word in the Senate, and Kamala should regret the unending word salads that she has tossed, I agree. We need to move on to substance, like actions taken by those politicians, which should speak louder for their character and beliefs than their words, which can be flubbed, twisted, and taken out of context by their opponents. But hey, that's just my perspective. I'm Scotty Nell Hughes. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Yeah, it's just this one right here. It's just the very, very opening.
By a bunch of childless cat ladies.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
Well, the internet is forever. Nowadays, it can make or break a candidate. From receiving backlash from those embracing the title childless cat ladies to buying support from an entire generation. Part of this election cycle is definitely playing out online. But who will come out on as top dog? Our cat, when it comes to two very important demographics. Either way, the U.S. presidential election is in for a wild ride. I'm Sky Nell Hughes, and this is Perspective. Yeah, perfect.
No. Now, are you talking to me? I'm not. I'm not Miss Rice. Yeah. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay.
We will have regulations, but from now on, the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry. We will have regulations, but from now on, the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry.
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Appreciate you too.
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Will somebody please go take Peyton and teach her how to play pickleball? Because she's going to move back to D.C. if we don't get her involved in something. I think pickleball will be perfect for her. They're called goat paddles, G-O-A-T. Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Google.
We will have regulations, but from now on, the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry.
Republican presidential nominee Donald J. Trump has promised to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. He will even create a Bitcoin strategic reserve with the currency already held by the U.S. government. This, along with replacing several current government officials known for their bullish treatment of crypto work, makes Donald Trump very popular with fans of the digital currency. But are these promises even realistic? Or will they, like most words on the campaign trail, be short-lived once the candidate is elected? I'm Sky Nell Hughes, and this is Perspective. Fraud, scam, bankruptcy, money laundering. These are all adjectives used by the Department of Justice and the Security Exchange Commission under President Joe Biden in reference to the cryptocurrency industry. Now, as expected, the Democratic-run financial wing of the government is strongly opposed to crypto, as it gives them very little power or control. That was until lately. Wall Street top regulators have begun a sweeping enforcement crusade to charge foreign and domestic investors alike with anti-money laundering violations. Now, the current Biden administration has said most crypto tokens being sold are being done so illegally. With each crypto leader being arrested and prosecuted, panic is setting in. However, House Republicans, led by Financial Services Chair Patrick McHenry and Agriculture Chair G.T. Thompson, feel as though there's an opportunity for legislation that could find a path forward by installing some regulations within the industry to protect it and allow it to grow. Now, Democrats like Representative Maxine Waters have even agreed to try to work on a deal that would create a more tailored crypto, including a move to regulate a type of token known as stablecoins. Now, this coinage is designed to maintain a value linked to traditional assets like the dollar. But wasn't the whole point of crypto in the first place was to get the government out of financial transactions? Well, I want to discuss with our panel. Loretta Napoleoni, journalist and author. Chris Rice, journalist and host, Rice Crypto Show on YouTube. And Steve Stockman, former U.S. representative. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. I want to actually start. I would love to actually start with you on this one. Steve, do you think cryptocurrency is a game changer for the United States? Or is this just a con that many Americans feel like they're being sucked into?
No, it's not a con, and people forget it. The main thing is distributive accounting, and it's could impact the industry could be in trillions of dollars. That's why I wrote the first crypto bill to protect crypto from government interference. It would really be helpful if the government stayed back and not interfered with a new industry. You know, when Napster first came out, everybody was afraid and no one wanted to do file sharing for music, and now it's the standard. So the fear is always in a new industry is there, and frankly, the Democrats don't like anything they don't have control over.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because Chris Rice, do you think that cryptocurrency should even be a political issue?
Yes, I actually do think so, because it is a threat to the fiat system, and it is something that can also help the United States in a lot of different ways. We are going to see that with stable coins here in the future as soon as this regulations start passing. But I would say 100% it needs to be a political issue, because really when it comes down to why Bitcoin was created, it was out of the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, the global financial crisis. And if those aren't political issues, I'm not sure exactly what would be.
But that being said, Chris, when you look at it, talking about the 2008 financial crisis, whose fault was it then? So what political party can take claim for spawning this new type of currency then?
I call it the uniparty. I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the right or the left. I blame it on the bankers that pay all the politicians that like to get their pockets full.
Well, and that's probably a very good answer on that, because I think both sides contributed to the 2008. If this was the result, and I agree with you, I think that's when it started taking off and people trying to look for an alternative form. I find it interesting, and Loretta, you can help me with this, that former President Trump has now currently begun to embrace the cryptocurrency movement. Is this just a political move?
I don't think so. I think, the problem with crypto is that it requires some time to understand exactly how they work. I mean, it's a new industry, as we said before. So the first approach, I would say, was a negative approach, because it is true that Bitcoin, which is the first crypto, represents a threat to the monopoly of the states in monetary policy, because you have an alternative currency in circulation within your country, and that is not accepted by the traditional economic theory. But then when you start looking at Bitcoin and seeing how Bitcoin has developed in the last decade, you realize that it is a fact. It is something that is here to stay, and it is changing the structure of the monetary system, which is positive. Change is not necessarily negative. Change can be positive. So embracing it for the United States, if it's done in the right way, as is promised, by the Trump Vance, the presentation, then I think that this should be welcomed also by the industry.
But that's the thing, Chris. Trump and even J.D. Vance, to a certain extent, it's really blown up recently, and hence why they're getting behind it. Why did Trump not get behind it in 2016 when he was actually president? Or did he, but it was more behind the scenes?
I think personally it really wasn't as mainstream. Now that BlackRock and Larry Fink have kind of given the okay with it, and being that Larry Fink is a very powerful individual, I think we've seen a lot of change in regulations since then, if you really want to pay attention to things. Now, honestly, when it comes to Trump, though, I was in Nashville. I got to listen to that speech. That's unfortunately why my voice is a little hoarse, so I do apologize about that. But I think he's surrounding himself with some very smart individuals, and I might even suggest that it's possible that Vivek Ramaswamy is very much in his ear, because a lot of what he is saying and has said seems to be very repetitive to what Vivek has to say, which is good things. And also, the one thing I will say as far as Donald Trump at that speech is he definitely knew what he was talking about in regards to cryptocurrency. He definitely showed that he was educated and he wasn't just reading a teleprompter.
And that's interesting, because we're talking about complex issues when you come to cryptocurrency. Steve, I see you over there laughing. I guess these are some familiar names to you that you're hearing kind of getting behind it. You've been in the Republican Party for a long time. Does this surprise you that the head of the Republican Party is getting behind something like cryptocurrency? And is that in agreement with what you consider the traditional Republican Party normally behind?
Well, I have to tell you, I was in Congress, and when I wrote the bill, it was 11 years ago. I also was in Nashville. And the thing is that, to be honest with you, I was also on the banking committee in the 90s. So I have to tell you, when I first came out for crypto, My colleagues call me a weirdo. You're dealing with criminal elements, and so frankly, it takes a while, I think, as you go through these steps for people to become aware of what it is. And I think the potential really we haven't covered, which is the distributive accounting and getting around government regulations, which is this is what I hope crypto does. We have so much bloated government. We have doubled the deficit in less than 10 years. And there's going to be a time when we have a crash. And frankly, Bitcoin will save the day in a lot of ways. And I think it will go up to $1 million a coin. Frankly, it's just unstoppable now.
Well, you say it's unstoppable. I want to talk about NFTs and what role they're playing in it, because obviously Trump's getting behind NFTs as well. That kind of potentially introduced him publicly to crypto in the whole entire world. Loretta, on this one, do you feel like that NFTs are playing enough of a role in crypto? And is that a lot why Trump is now actually becoming more and more familiar with it?
No, I don't think so. I think, the NFT is an instrument used by the sports industry, for example. And, of course, but in a campaign, it's fantastic because, you can sell merchandises, using NFT. But NFT has nothing to do with, the actual role of crypto in the monetary policy and the functioning of fiat money within, a country. I think that is the main issue, really. How the Bitcoin has changed the way we actually look at money. I mean, I think it's fantastic because, at the end of the day, we're trusting a software. But the truth is the fiat money, since the end of the gold exchange standard, it is an act of fate because, behind the dollar, the US dollar, there's nothing. We don't have reserves that can match the value of the dollar. So at the end of the day, the great I think intuition of Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he is or he was or she was, it is the fact that you can mimic this fate, which is the base of money, and produce a software which is more reliable than a government because it doesn't get influenced by politics. And that is, I think, the great innovation of Bitcoin.
Well, it's interesting, and I mentioned the NFTs just because that was Trump's original, when he went public, he started talking about his own NFTs, that I think was a stepping stone that kind of led him to go, oh, wait a minute, but also crypto kind of it led him into that conversation. You kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, Chris, talking about Trump was very knowledgeable in his speech of crypto, that he knew the different parts, that only someone that's involved in it, it's not just something you can just read on the teleprompter. Who do you know, who do you think is actually advising Donald Trump right now on crypto and want to differentiate himself from potentially what the Democrats would have liked to do with crypto?
Again, I would have to kind of default back to Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay. He was at the Bitcoin conference last year as well as in attendance this year, and he was very pro Bitcoin at that time too. So he's been very forward thinking in what he's been doing, and also the cryptocurrency industry itself and community, that is so much innovation that Donald Trump wants to see be kept in the United States and not go to other countries, that I'm sure that there's other people advising him as well. Because when it comes to that NFT project that you mentioned, I'm sure Donald Trump himself wasn't putting together the NFTs. He probably has some advisors, a team of people that he's working with that may have suggested to do something like that. And as an entrepreneur, he's definitely open to new possibilities. And as an entrepreneur, he has definitely had to recognize that this is the best performing asset of all time. Bitcoin is what I'm referring to.
Well, and it's interesting you say that. Steve, you mentioned you were on the Banking and Financing Committee 10, 20 years ago when you were actually in Congress yourself. Do you think anybody else outside of, have you heard any other rumblings amongst Republicans actually looking at crypto, looking at this as actually being a serious issue that they need to study? Or is it just recently with Vivek Ramaswamy, Donald Trump putting it on the campaign trail, that Republicans are starting to look more into the issue and potentially trying to take advantage of the opportunity?
I think libertarian Republicans are looking at it in particular because we all that have libertarian hearts that are Republicans want to see less government. And it also facilitates commerce in a very speedy way if it starts becoming a normal adoption. So this is a transformation that's going to be, it's huge. And I don't think people understand just how much it's going to transform this country and the world until many years later.
Well, Loretta, Chris, Steve, I want you to stay right here. We're going to continue this conversation. Because after the break, we're going to look at the status of cryptocurrency under the Trump administration and the effects crypto will have on other financial sectors of the government. Okay. After the break, we are going to look at the status of cryptocurrency under the Trump administration and the effects crypto will have on other financial sectors of the government. Welcome back to Perspective. I'm your host, Scotty Nell Hughes. The Securities and Exchange Commission has been collecting legal victories aimed at wrecking the current crypto industry, along with some of the biggest players. At the forefront is Securities and Exchange Commissioner Chair Gary Gensler. Now, Gary has been very suspicious and has been public with this feeling about the market being riddled with corruption and considers crypto to be very dangerous. Hence why Republican presidential candidate Donald J. Trump promised to fire Gensler is greatly welcomed by the crypto crowd. So let's continue our discussion with our panel. Loretta Napoleoni, a journalist and author. Chris Rice, a journalist and host. Ev Rice Crypto Show on YouTube. And Steve Stockman, former U.S. representative. Thank you for staying with us through the break. You know, I'm going to start with you, Loretta, because if President Trump wins, we know he actually wishes to get rid of the current Secretary and Exchange Commissioner chair. But who could he tap, do you find, as his Treasury Secretary? Could it be, and I think I could see Chris over there getting excited, Vivek Ramaswamy, who encouraged him to adopt the policy that he will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency?
No, I don't think so. Well, of course, I don't know Donald Trump personally, but I don't think, he's going to pick on somebody which is controversial to the traditional, let's call it, the traditional finance industry and, the new industry. I think he's going to pick somebody that is professional, that knows how the market works, but who is going to have a low profile. Publicly. We need trust in the new system. So we need somebody that is perceived as a professional that is not going to do the interests of one group or another, but who is going to guide this regulation, which is going to have a tremendous impact, not only in the United States, but in the rest of the world, because, all the eyes will be on the new regulation. And I think, a low-profile, highly professional individual would be much better than anybody else.
Because that's the tradition that Donald Trump usually takes, is low profile with any of his individuals. The only thing is he wants to make sure they're just not bigger than him. Chris, I mentioned Vivek Ramaswamy. I got to bring you in here. Do you think he would actually be considered as a candidate for Secretary of the Treasury? And would that be a good thing?
No, I don't think he would consider him for that. And I'm not sure that Vivek would want that. But I definitely think that he may be involved in his cabinet in a position that may be an advisory type position in cryptocurrency. And I believe that Donald Trump has already talked about putting together a cryptocurrency some sort of committee. So that is definitely a positive thing. Now, when Donald Trump said something about no central bank digital currency, he also did say something very positive in regards to stable coins, which I mentioned earlier. And the unfortunate thing is stable coins and central bank digital currencies and digital dollars, they're all the same thing with just different names, and it's all programmable currency, just so everybody's aware of that.
Well, and I appreciate that clarification, but it makes me want to scratch my head when I think of Donald Trump, especially on an issue like this. Steve, I've got to ask you, are you a fan of Chairman Powell, and do you think that President Trump should nominate somebody else to replace him, the Federal Reserve Chairman, if he continues this push on crypto?
I'm not in favor of anybody that locks up people that try to do innovation. It's really shameful. The last 4 years, actually, even frankly, under other administrations, they didn't accept or realize the advantages of crypto and distributive accounting. And we've been held back. What they did in New York, they passed a lot of regulations. New York was a hot place 10 years ago. And when they passed all these rules and regulations, all the people from New York are now spread all over the country, a lot of them in Miami. And it's quite shameful. Regulations kill an industry. And we repeatedly do this throughout history. We kill in America, we have these great inventions and great ideas, and then government comes in and steps on it and kills it. But eventually, there's going to be people accepting of it, and they're going to realize the change and look back on it and wonder. It's like a fax machine. We wonder what we could do without it. Now we're without it. We're happy and fortunate, and that's the way it's going to go. It's going to be adopted.
But you mentioned that, but Loretta, I heard over the weekend talking to somebody about crypto, and they were saying Mexico and the Middle East are kicking the tail of the West right now in regards to crypto and being able to get that establishment. But is it once everybody, let's just say everybody gets involved, everybody gets on board with crypto, will it not be as desirable, will it not be as valuable if everybody, especially the West, gets involved, as they've done with so many other issues when they get involved, and they start to regulate it? Will other countries then start to follow in their footsteps?
I mean, I tend to agree about, regulation. I mean, generally regulation kills industry because, it blocks it into a space that is too small, especially, at the beginning of an industry, which is, the case of the crypto. But I would distinguish here between Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto. I mean, the truth is that Bitcoin is structured in a way that really you can't regulate it too much. What you can do with Bitcoin, of course, you can tax it. So taxation is going to be one of the most instruments that will be used in order to regulate the industry. But, you can't control, how, Bitcoin is produced. You can't control the value of the Bitcoin either because, it is decided by the market. The software is produced by the software, and the acceptance of the mining is done based upon all the members of the Bitcoin community. So really it is, I think, conceptually the currency of the people. All the other cryptos are different, so we can discuss, one by one, like stablecoin, for example, which is for sure linked to the U.S. dollar. But regulating Bitcoin for the state will be a challenge because there is not very much space. So I actually have a lot of trust. I'm a believer in the future of Bitcoin as, the currency of the people worldwide. It may sound like a dream, but I think in the next decade, it may become true.
Well, it's interesting, Chris, because she does talk about how she's I love, Loretta, your optimism on the subject. However, the current standard right now, unfortunately, in banking is held by the Federal Reserve. So, Chris, how do you think the Federal Reserve and the larger banks will react if President Trump is elected and he implements crypto and encourages its growth even more?
I mean, that's going to be a good question. It's definitely going to be something to pay attention to because when it comes to Bitcoin, again, like all you can really do is take down its on and off ramps, which the bank can definitely control. That's you kind of cashing in and cashing out of the particular cryptocurrencies. But these things are designed to go peer to peer. So that's the kind of aspect of this that they cannot stop. So I think it's going to take a lot more of seeing what's happening as far as regulation, but the future is 100% digital. When you look at the IMF, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlement, ECB, and all the things that are being introduced, the M bridge that's being created, which is basically a way to interconnect all of these different digital currencies, whether they're central bank digital currencies or stable coins or digital fiats. It's a way to interconnect. FedNow is a US version of interconnecting them. And then they're also going to be interconnected in bigger ways, as I mentioned with M-Bridge. And M-Bridge is something that's been developed with lots of different banks, including IMF and BIS. And we just recently saw Saudi Arabia join the M-Bridge. So this is almost mimicking things that are happening in cryptocurrency already. So it's the question of, do you want to be in a cryptocurrency cage system, or do you want to be in more of an open cryptocurrency system? And Bitcoin is going to offer that alternative that's not going to be centralization and control. When I mentioned programmable currency, there's a lot of things that people are fearing in the future of where that programmability can go, especially when we've seen things happen in Canada with the trucker envoy. So there's a lot of things that legislation prevents countries from doing, but taking things into the private sector with stable coins, especially here in the United States, is going to alleviate the U.S. government from having to get involved with legislation changes.
Right.
And the Federal Reserve technically cannot create a central bank digital currency without the approval of Congress, which they've already said they're not planning on creating one. And I don't believe they will on a retail side, but they will on a wholesale side. And that is where you'll have a central bank digital currency for banks.
Well, that's a great lead into my final question. I'm going to give it to you, Steve, because will President Trump be able to get your former colleagues on board to support crypto as a currency, or are there just going to have to be a lot of checks written like everything else in order to buy off Washington's approval?
Well, the cryptocurrency has been community has been giving quite a bit of money. I think they've surpassed all other lobbyists in their donations. But I want to close with something that's real important. We're destroying the dollar. There's no question about it. The dollar, as it's being destroyed, becomes less valuable. And then people like Saudi Arabia that depend on the dollar as a current exchange, and it's going to happen where crypto becomes a default currency because it's just a case in which we're destroying what we have. And unfortunately, that's government's policy is destroying our currency, and we're going to, by de facto, we're going to end up going to Bitcoin.
Very interesting. Loretta, Chris, Steve, thank you so much for our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, a candidate can promise the moon to a constituency, but if they are not elected, those promises are washed away with tears, alongside all the other promises made on the campaign trail. However, if the candidate is elected, those promises can soon become the thorn in their side, especially if they were extremely specific to one group. Those who support cryptocurrency are already suspicious of the government, hence why they turned to the electronic currency in the first place. Disappointment only will lead to distance, and Donald J. Trump, if elected, will only be given one chance to make his words come true. Failure not only will affect trust in the government by a growing population, but trust in the financial sector, which has already seen its account overdrafted. But hey, that's just my perspective. I'm Skynell Hughes. See you next time. You were absolutely lovely. Hopefully you'll come back. You were wonderful. All of the guests were, but you, I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll chat soon.
Lovely.
Absolutely. Bye. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you slipped up on one word. It was bad. It was like quite a slip. I mean, you did really good.
But I slipped up real bad.
It was a slip.
Okay,
Because
listen.
I noticed,
Okay.
I wanted to see if we were going to stop you down, and then your wire popped out, and I'm like, hey, we should stop, and they said, no. I said, okay. And we would have just stopped, and I said, we wouldn't be doing it.
I know she went with the guest on it. That was the thing. These were new guests that we didn't want to look unprofessional. No. Okay. Just tell her I have no IFB, so she's just gonna. Yeah. Okay. So are we doing? Where are we going? Just the walk up, or? Oh, okay. Nope. Don't need one. I think we're just doing 3. Five.
We will have regulations, but from now on, the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry.
Republican presidential nominee Donald J. Trump has promised to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. He will even create a Bitcoin strategic reserve with the currency already held by the U.S. government. This, along with replacing several current government officials known for their bullish treatment of crypto work, makes Donald Trump very popular with fans of the digital currency. But are these promises even realistic? Or will they, like most words on the campaign trail, be short-lived once the candidate is elected? I'm Skynell Hughes, and this is Perspective. I'm going to go home, I'm going to cry. I cannot handle this negativity.